Now to Southwest Airlines here in the United States, which announced its first loss in some 11 years. Now, the stock is up 3% on the day. However, like all the others, it's down 45% for the year so far. The revenue is down at least 90% in April, and revenue is crashing down at least 90% for April, and May is going to be similarly down. And only 6% of seats were sold this month. Gary Kelly is the CEO of Southwest. He joins me from Dallas in Texas. Gary, good to see you. I mean, the situation, obviously, I mean, the last quarter really doesn't reflect the full story. It's the next quarter and the second quarter. And there, do you have any insight or any visibility on how bad it's going to be?
No, and Richard, I think you've described it very well. January and February were actually very strong months for us, and so things began to unravel in March. So the first quarter doesn't really provide a great deal of an example of what to expect next. The whole month of April is going to be very bad. So revenues all month long are down in that 90 to 95% range. And our best guess is that May will be something similar. There are bookings in place for June. There are bookings in place for July. What we don't know, of course, is whether the bookings will stick and whether we'll continue to add. If we have cancellations for June, July travel like we have had here for April, May, then we'll have poor months ahead. So short answer is no. On the other hand, in the United States here, we're beginning to see states and cities open back up again. So one would think that people will also want to begin traveling again, and we're hopeful that that will happen.
I realize, obviously, that airlines are different in nature, structure, route networks, passenger focus, and all of that. But if you just think about what BA has announced today, based on the idea that there won't be, under any scenario, the same requirement for staffing at these levels in the future. Now, you allude to this in your statement today, that in the future, unless there's a recovery, that you will also be looking at some form of permanent reduction in workforce.
Yeah, so we're in a little bit different situation than BA is, of course, because we have a commitment to have no furloughs through the end of September, because we did have the CARES Act and the payroll support program. That payroll support program covers probably 75 to 80% of our salary and benefits cost through September the 30th. So that gives us time to see if things will begin to recover during this 6-month time period. But just like BA, if we get to the point where we're in the fall of 2020 and things are still as poor as they are, there's no choice. We have 60,000 employees, and we're going to work really hard to preserve jobs, preserve pay, and preserve benefits. But we'll lose $900 million in cash in the month of April, and obviously that's just not sustainable. So if that is the new reality, we'll have to radically restructure.
Can I just ask you about fuel hedging and your position there? Bearing in mind you're not flying and there's no requirement for fuel, are you expecting a hit on that?
No, we are flying, so our schedule is it'll be reduced by not the 90% in terms of in relation to our revenues, but our flying will be reduced by at least 60% here in the second quarter. So we do have a hedging program, but it's all in the form of call options. So as prices have dropped, we're paying market prices. So there's no real exposure there. We have more hedges in place now than we are burning fuel, but there's really, all you do is pay the premium, and that's the most that we would be out in terms of cost.
Gary, I just want to get your feelings and your thoughts. None of us ever came into our industries to see the decimation and destruction through no fault of anybody's, arguably. But when you look at airlines, Can you see a time when you get back to anything approaching normality, however you choose to define that?
Absolutely, I can. And I firmly believe that we will. But it's going to be a difficult recovery. And I think on top of just the health concerns and sheltering in place and lockdowns and all the things that we're dealing with there, there is also a recession. And, do people have the means if they may not be willing to travel, but do they even have the means to travel if they're unemployed? Businesses are cutting travel, which is very typical in a recessionary environment. However, again, we'll defeat this virus, and presumably this is a once in a long period of time. I don't know if it's once in a century, but it's an unusual pandemic. Hopefully the world and our country will be much better prepared the next time this comes around. But we'll get past this. I just used the Spanish flu of 1918 as an example, and you had the Roaring '20s shortly after that. So there's every reason to believe that we'll get past this. But, companies and individuals are going to feel some pain in getting through this crisis. There's no question about it.
Can I just ask you finally the difficulty that you have? I mean, running any company at a time like this is nigh on impossible. Running a major airline at a time like this beggars belief as to the complexity. How are you managing?
Well, we're a family here at Southwest. We have very deep leadership. We were extremely well prepared, and that's one of the hallmark strengths of Southwest Airlines over 49 years. We had the lowest level of debt to total capital in our history coming into 2020. We had surplus levels of liquidity and cash on hand. We have a very low cost structure. Our product is loved by our customers. I mean, they're real fans of the company. So there's so many things that we have to build on. We've got the strongest route network in the United States. 96% of our capacity is deployed domestically. So there's all these things to build on, and our people are resilient. They're battle hardened, if you will. So there will need to be a shared sacrifice. We'll all need to work together. We'll do the best job we can to preserve jobs, preserve pay. But we just don't know what the future holds here, and if we need to make some temporary sacrifices, I think our people will do it, and I think it will be well worth it. People will travel. There's no question about that. People will travel. It's just how many people will travel and how many companies will win in that environment versus how many will lose. Because as we always know, I mean, in every recession, there's winners and losers. We just want to make sure that we position Southwest to be on the winning side.
Good to talk to you, Gary. Always great to have you on the program. Thank you, sir, for taking time. We'll talk in happier circumstances. I appreciate it.